Odama is a really peculiar and weird GameCube game from designer Yu Saito. Basically, they combined feudal Japan, real-time strategy, and pinball into one game. It sounds weird and it sounds like it might not work, and it kind of doesn't. It's a really interesting concept that just gets caught up in the execution, and it ends up being incredibly frustrating and just too hard for its own good. Now, it takes its whole samurai shogun bushido setting pretty seriously. And when you start off the game, you've got the Odama, which is this giant, heavy ball that you can throw out onto the field and just smash your opponents, destroying buildings and enemies, soldiers, everything, including your own soldiers. And there's also, you have pinball flippers at the bottom of the screen that you can use to control the Odama. You also have the Ninten Bell, which, when you strike with the Odama, creates a shockwave that will knock down all enemy soldiers. Now, the ultimate goal of every level in Odama is to take the Ninten Bell from the bottom and move it to the top of the screen. Now, you have a little bell crew, they do this automatically, but they need to be protected by other soldiers. Now, you have these soldiers in your ranks that you can just launch out from the bottom of the screen using the Z button. But to actually control them, you're going to need to use the GameCube microphone. Odama actually comes with this cool little plastic clip that allows you to put the GameCube microphone right on top of the GameCube controller, and then you activate it using the X button. So you give a bunch of basic voice commands to your troops to make them do stuff. You tell them to push forward, push back. You can tell them to flank the enemies, move to the right, move to the left. You can also tell them to rally. Now, the rallying mechanic is probably the most important of all of the voice commands. Using the D-pad, you can select different specific rally points on the map. Now, these rally points are usually some sort of enemy structure, a dam, a bridge, something that you need to take control of. So when you select it, hit the X button and say, rally, the soldiers are going to go run over to that point and try to take over it. Now, the problem with your soldiers is that they have really lousy short-term memory. You're going to have to tell them over and over again to do these things. So if you want them to keep pressing forward up against the enemy troops, press forward, press forward, press forward. You're going to be saying that over and over again, and it really gets tiresome pretty quickly. After the second or third level, you're pretty much tired of having to give these voice commands. Now, in its normal form, the Odama is just an indiscriminate killer. If it rolls over your troops on its way to go and kill some enemy troops, too bad. You're out those troops. Those troops are dead now. However, there are ways that you can power up the Odama. You'll find that when you destroy structures, there are little power-ups in them. Most importantly are these little green glowing orbs. Now, when you pick up the green power-up, it makes the Odama green for a short period of time. And when it's in this state, you can roll over your own armies without hurting them. But when you roll over enemy soldiers, it actually recruits them to your side. So it's strategically incredibly important. There's a lot of stuff going on in Odama all the time, between dealing with the pinball controls, you use the left and right triggers to hit the flippers, and you can also use the left analog stick to kind of tilt the field. You're shouting voice commands at your soldiers. It's chaotic. And there's not really a lot of strategy to it. There's other parts of the game that are really just oddly hard and punishing, like the way that the number of troops that you have at your disposal is determined by how many troops accompany the Ninten Bell to the top of the screen in the previous level. So if you don't do particularly well in one level, the next level is going to be even harder. So it has this way of kind of punishing the weak. For all the faults that Odama has in the gameplay, the presentation is actually quite striking. It's kind of weird that it looks like a pinball table, obviously, but it also looks very convincingly like an authentic feudal Japanese battlefield. The swarms of soldiers out on the field look very realistic. The game has a lot of great Japanese voice acting in it. You have this advisor that's constantly shouting things in your ear, giving you advice in Japanese in this really great, gruff, stern Japanese voice that lends an air of authenticity to the whole thing. And whenever you issue commands to your soldiers, they'll shout back, and there's always this great din of battle. You'll hear, giant taiko drums pounding in the background. It's all really great, and it all works to the game's favor. The graphics don't really stand up to close inspection. From a wide angle, everything looks really good. But when you get up close, soldiers are really crude, the models are very simple, there's a lot of blurry textures. It's a little bit ugly up close. It's commendable that Odama would try something so bold as it does. Mixing these disparate elements together to try something new, it takes some guts. Unfortunately, the experiment doesn't really pan out, and Odama doesn't live up to its potential. The average game player is going to be turned off by the game's really steep learning curve. It's tough to get into, but once you even get over that learning curve, strategy fans are going to find that there's not a lot of deep strategy beyond that. And all of the game's faults are ultimately just put into such stark relief by the fact that it gets some of the things right.